Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you are ending up watching or listening to this. I'm Menelik Fernandez. Welcome to Run It Back. This is episode number 40, bit of a milestone there. Very happy to see that happening. Actually, when I originally started up everything, 25 was the first goal, and then 40 became the second one, strangely. So I'm happy to be here. The premise of Run It Back remains the same. Basically, we take teams that have played previously and we run it back, so to speak, where we talk about the preparation that went into the game, adjustments we made, matchups, strategy, all that fun stuff. And we talk about the effect of all of those adjustments on the game if we would do them again or if we would do things differently. You know, hindsight, as they say, is 2020. So today, uh, KJ, I'm sorry, I'm not going to say your club name properly. Unifacisa
Unifacisa is the name of the team.
Unifacisa, excuse me, versus Flamenco. The game took place November 6th, 2019. And as has kind of been the common theme on these shows as well, we often are fortunate enough to have one of the coaches from the game join us. And today we are very, very lucky to have KJ Smith join us. KJ, give me a second. I'm going to try and do you some justice with a little bit of a warm welcome. KJ has been an assistant coach at this current club since 2018. He is an advanced scout up here in Canada with the Fraser Valley Bandits since July of 2020. He was a head coach at the NBA school in Brazil in 2019. He did a year and a half, which would be 2 seasons, I would assume, at Florida Christian as an assistant coach. He did 4 years at the Eric Spoelstra Academy, 2 seasons at Cal State Fullerton, and you would definitely recognize his name if you're in the basketball community because he's a contributor on many sites such as Fast Draw, on his own Medium, and is a writer for Prep Hoops. So KJ, I am really, really happy, humbled, excited to have you join us today. Thanks so much for taking time out of your week, out of your day to run it back with us.
First, thank you for having me, and thank you for like the best introduction to make me look really, really good. You're the ultimate hype man. I appreciate it.
I got to do you justice, man. If you're lending some time to us, I'm so appreciative for it. So before usually like to start with like planning and what goes into the game, which many in the community have been very excited that I have you on for because you're very renowned for the planning and scouting element of the game. But before we delve into that a little bit, can you give me a bit of a background about your league, about this game, the lead up to the game, the importance level of the game, all that fun stuff that we might not know up here?
Right. So this league in Brazil is pretty competitive. And last year when this game took place, we had Leandro Barbosa was one of the leading scorers in the league with 25 a game.
The blur.
Yeah. I mean, he's not the blur, but he's a blur compared to everyone else still. So for us normal people, Anderson Varejao was in the league 2 years ago. Alex Garcia, who played for the Spurs. There was Marquinhos, who you'll see in this game, had a stint with the Pelicans. So definitely a lot of, former NBA Brazilians in the league. So that makes it pretty fun from a competitive standpoint. In this particular game, this was one of our early games in the year. We ended up losing the game by 1 point, and we actually finished the year with, I believe, 6 losses by 1 point, which, yeah, it's absurd to say the least. But Flamengo was the favorite to win the league had we continued, without COVID or anything. And basically, with us being a smaller club, our game plan was pretty simple on the offensive end, and then we had some variation on the defensive end for how we wanted to try and get them to play into our hands. Flamengo is basically, in terms of being famous, they are the Lakers, the Knicks, the Yankees. You put them all together, that is Flamengo.
Wow.
The biggest team in Brazil, one of the biggest in South America. So their fan base is, to say they're large, it's an understatement.
So let's talk about the preparation going in here. Had you played them already this season? And like, what goes into a scout for you? How are you developing this game plan that you're putting together? And maybe with a bit of guidance, you could touch on some things like, matchups, sets that go in, how you're delivering that scout to your guys, how much film you're watching, what film you're watching, all those fun topics.
Okay, so we had not played them prior in this game. This was, I believe, our 5th game of the year. So I had a chance to watch their last 5 games as well as their entire preseason. They get to play in a lot of international South American competitions in Argentina and other places. And they also played in the G League as well against I believe the G League Elite at the time in the preseason.
Oh, wow.
So I had a lot of games to reference and go through. Typically, I will watch at least their last 3 games, but I'll start scouting 2 weeks out because sometimes their most recent game is against a team they won by 40, and that doesn't help me too much when I'm showing it to our players. So
Right.
I'll try to find teams that do things similar to us and present that to our players. In regards to the scout, we break our scout into a couple parts. So between myself and the other assistant, I do all of the video scouting. So I do one video scout of the entire team, which is their team concepts, their main plays, their main defenses, and I just really hammer those home with the play calls as well. That video is about 5 minutes more or less. Then I have separate videos about 90 seconds each of every main individual player, with usually what they do well. So with us, we're very big on what the individual can or can't do, because regardless of the set play, a player can't change his habits or his playing style, right? If you love to reject, you're not just going to stop rejecting pick and rolls.
Right.
So we look for those things. We look for, oh, he likes to reject left. He doesn't reject going right. So I have a video that shows each player for 90 seconds on things of that nature. And then our other assistant does the written report, which will say, okay, we want to target these 2 or 3 players in these situations. And we'll have a list of the best sets to attack those guys in particular, along with the rest of our details.
And I would assume that you guys, while he's doing one and you're doing the other, are working, pretty in tandem with one another. There's a lot of coordination that's going back and forth. Like, hey, I saw this, maybe we're leaning towards that. And he'll be like, yes, I'm in agreement, or no, I'm not, that type of deal.
Correct. We're always showing stuff back and forth to make sure we're on the same page, because you definitely don't want, anyone in or out of the way or having different things shown to the players. So that matters a lot.
So Mike has just thrown in the chat, how much influence did you have on this scouting structure, or was this all requested by the head coach?
I had a lot of influence as far as the head coach pretty much leaving me to my devices to decide how I wanted to break down the system of how we present information. There were a couple of things within the structure that he wanted to emphasize. For him, he's very big on the opposing team's inbounds plays. So that was something I made a focus on in the video. It's the first thing the players see. But besides that, I was pretty free to throw around whatever I liked as well.
I like that, because in the video, I've actually got 2 of their blobs. So I'm happy that they do make your scout, and we can talk a little bit about those when we get into the film.
Could I interrupt?
Absolutely, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, KJ, happy to have you on this, man. I have a question about the scouting. So you said I'm watching about 5 games before our game. So do you watch them after each other, or do you say, okay, this week I'm going to watch this and this game from these clubs we have to play in the upcoming 3 weeks? Or do you do it as a bundle, so to say, and watch 5 games from the same team in a week leading up to the game?
So with teams that we're going to play in the near future, I will watch specifically those teams, every morning or afternoon. And then I will, in those games, I'll usually actually note take and take video, etc. And then I will watch just about every game in the league casually, just so I have an idea of what I'm looking for. So that when I go back, I can say, okay, in the 3rd quarter, I saw this from that team. Let me make sure to write that down in the future.
I like that. KJ, let me elaborate on that a little bit too, just about the actual film watching. I haven't asked this question of any other coach, but it's just kind of come to mind right now. When you watch, do you watch, first of all, at normal speed, or do you watch at an advanced speed of the game? And when you watch each game, are you watching the whole game through and then going back to particular parts to make edits, or are you making edits and notes as you're going through, only doing it at one time?
I make the edits as I go, and I do watch the game at double speed, or somewhere around there,
Yeah.
just because I'm pretty familiar with the teams in the league now, so there's not too much new stuff I'm seeing from game to game. So that allows me to say, okay, I know this play is fist side, so let me just clip that and move on to the next play and go from there.
And in your league, how are you getting the calls? Like I know like NBA has advanced scouts. I know most pro leagues, it's like you'll see a team 2 or 3 times. So by the second time you've seen them, or the third time you've seen them, you've heard them or whatever. But the first time you're going through, like in this instance, how are you getting a lot of the calls and putting those in?
In this case, since we're playing in bubble formats without fans, it's pretty easy to hear the calls or to see hand signs,
Right.
which is, from my perspective, it's great because that makes my job easier.
Right.
Because you're not, it's not like football where you've got all of these disguised calls and things of that nature. So that's how I get a lot of my calls, maybe 80% of them or so. There are a few teams that don't call anything. They do more of a silent system. So in that case, I can figure it out based on where the pass goes in the following action. So
Right.
if they pass to the wing and cut to the corner, it's one action. But if they pass to the wing and cut through to the opposite side, it's a different action. So there's only so many things they can do off of that initiating action, even if they don't call plays. For any call I don't have, then some of the assistant coaches around the league, we have sort of our own network of reaching out to guys and trading clips.
Right.
Oh, you Flamengo, I'll give you this if you send me that, and etc.
Nice. How long do you keep your notes for? I mean, you're in your second season now, if I'm not mistaken, or you've completed 2 in your third.
I'm in my completed 2. I'm in my third.
Right. So, multiple years now. Obviously, each scout is getting better and better. It's becoming more of a habit. You're becoming more of a pro at it. How long do you keep all your notes, and how often do you go back and refer to previous season because it's the same coach type deal?
I keep everything, especially with coaches that I already know very well, because sometimes they might have a play they've run for years and they might just change the name. And there are certain teams that they've got the same roster construction, more or less, there's a lot of carryover. So those teams have actually tried to have 2 calls for 2 or 3 particular plays. So in the first half, they might call it fist, and then in the next half, they're calling it thumb, right? So I have to be able to distinguish that based on the alignment, the entry pass, etc., so that in real time, I can make sure our guys know what's about to happen.
For sure. So going back to the delivery of the scout a little bit, you mentioned you make 1 5-minute video, and then you make several, roughly 90-second videos on traits. How do you deliver that to your coaching staff and to your guys? So you, like, one coach is doing the paper, one is doing the video. Obviously, there's some sort of meeting that's happening with the coaches prior, and then what are you doing with the guys?
So we do everything through WhatsApp, and first we will share it in a coaches group chat, and the head coach will confirm, hey, everything's good. Sometimes he might want to remove one clip or add an extra clip of a particular action or defense. Once he's good with it, I send it to the total group, which has all the players and coaches, and the guys are free to watch it at their own leisure, ask questions in the future. And throughout the week leading up to that game, I'll usually pull players aside by position and say, okay, we're playing one of the better point guards in the league in the case of Flamengo.
Yeah.
So let me take the guys that I know are going to guard him the most and show them what he's looking for. In the case of point guards, I take the point guards and I take the 5s as well, because they need to know how to defend him in ball screen as well. So they need to have that communication.
Love it. Makes sense. And would you, I'm assuming you use some sort of depth chart at your level in terms of rotations and all that. Would you, predominantly only be showing the clips of the 1s or the 1s and the 5s, and your wing players only other wing players, or does everybody get a little sample of everybody type deal?
Everyone gets a sample of everybody, because we do have a good amount of switching, especially with this group that we had last year, where we just needed an extra curveball. So when we went to that switching, it was important for guys to know, hey, he wants to go left. I know he's right-handed. He wants to go left. I don't care if he goes right? So understanding those individual player tendencies mattered a lot.
Nice. Sounds like it gets pretty detailed. In terms of varied screen coverages or varied actions, how in detail did you go in this specific game? Let's move a little away from the general process to this particular one. What were like the things that you identified that you guys wanted to do that were advantageous for you?
For us in this game, the goal was to make the facilitators the scorers. Their point guard, his name is Franco Balbi. He's an Argentinian, tremendous floor general, great passer, shoots it well in the last 5 minutes of the game. Not known as a shooter. Teams typically try to rondo him, go under his pick and roll. But if you let him pass to everyone else, I mean, they're going to completely demolish you. So they're very dangerous, especially in transition. So our job was make him the one shooting the ball, and then just take off in transition where we knew that they weren't necessarily sound or aggressive defensively. So once he took the shot, we were off to the races.
Nice, I like it. And what about like your common principles for your team, like things like how many to the glass and pace of play that you want to play at? Like, do you guys, with your automatics, do you teach them any differently in the week that is leading up to a specific game?
I won't say we teach them differently. We might emphasize a particular automatic based on the matchup or an area on the floor. But in our regards, we wanted as much tempo as possible because we are a team that plays 5 out with a lot of shooting, spacing, and things of that nature. So we really wanted to take advantage of their roster's weaknesses, which was that they are on the slower end. And that's typically how they dominate so well in our league, is that Flamengo kills you in transition and you're just taking the ball out of the net, so they force you to play half-court defense. Even if they're not great defensively, you're still playing in the half court more than they are. And that adds up over time.
So looking back at the game, do you feel that you adhered well to the game plan? And were there things in hindsight that you would change now from the preparation? Like, hey, maybe we didn't need to play at that pace, or maybe we should have been going under on him, etc.
The first half, I generally was pretty happy with how we looked outside of a couple, screw ups in terms of the coverage and the report. I think in the second half, we went away from the scout report a little too much. We started to go under too many screens on actual shooters, and then started going over on non-shooters. And when they start scoring in bunches, you start to want to score in bunches as well. And that's not a team you want to get in a shooting contest with in that regard. So I thought our issues were more on the offensive end than the defensive end specifically.
Interesting. Do you, like, in game, are you keeping track of anything on the sideline for your coach? Like, are you statting something, or you pay attention to anything like that?
Yeah, so being like the main scout on the team, I basically I track every team's or opponent team's offensive efficiency. So, for example, I basically have a list, and I basically remember the team's set plays because I've seen the video so many times. Okay, they ran horn side, we fouled, so I just make a note, foul. Horn side, they scored. Okay, they scored. So that way in timeouts, I can say, hey, they're killing us on this play. Here's why, here's the action. And that sort of locks me into how we're guarding them. And then on our end, I'll just watch our defense in general to see how we're, if we're rotating, if we're not connected with the ball handler well enough, things of that nature.
Awesome. I love that stuff. So do you find that distracts you from coaching at all, or do you find that helps you with coaching?
Me personally, it doesn't distract me, just because it's very, for me personally, it's very second nature as far as knowing the other team's sets and whatnot, because when you have multiple assistants on a bench, one thing you run into the issue of when you don't have something to key in on is you have 3 or 4 guys all watching the game, but you have more chances to overlap because you're all just, almost spitballing these ideas that we see. So with our staff, we try to streamline it more where, okay, this assistant, you're watching the offense, this one's the defense, this one is this. So that way we had very specific things to talk about in the timeout. More so because you you're never going to see everything or be able to adjust to everything. So we needed to be mindful of the things that could hurt us the most in regards to our system and just hammer those details home.
Love it. What about box score stuff? Like we play 4 quarters in FIBA, obviously. Are you paying attention to anything on those stats? Like, do they mean anything to you? Or are you more concerned with the stuff that you're writing down that you're making adjustments based upon?
In regards to the box score, definitely offensive rebounds. That makes a huge, huge difference. I think across any level, you're creating more chances to score. So I'm always looking at offensive rebounds first and foremost. And besides that, I'm usually looking at foul trouble for both teams because we do like to target certain guys or poor defenders. And understanding where those guys are poor defenders makes a big difference. So typically with really intelligent point guards, they're great at not getting in foul trouble, right? They know how to not reach or they know how to work the referees. So we might put him off ball and just target him off the ball and put him in situations where he has to foul every time he helps.
Is there anything specific adjustment wise that you can remember, like turning to your coach in this game and saying like, hey, we need to do this specifically, or like give us an example of what that would look like from you?
We did go to our matchup zone, especially in the second half, sort of a matchup 2-3, matchup 3-2.
Yeah, I got a clip or 2 of it actually. So
right.
Yeah.
So and the rules can kind of throw people off because the rules are simple, but they're not simple, right? Because if you don't pay attention, you're going to get destroyed with it. Especially us, because there were times where we had 3 guys on the floor that are all 5'10" or under, just because the game forced us to put those guys in that position. So the matchup was definitely a big one, and it has saved us several times throughout the year. So it definitely bought us some opportunities.
Love it. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to jump in. If not, I'm going to move into a bit of film. As I get set up with this, KJ, basically what would be ideal in terms of the way film works here is you let me run it through one time. You can take a look at it, obviously. And then let me go back, run through it again, and sort of, as best I can, give a description of what is happening, just because some people don't watch the show, they listen to it on a podcast later on type deal. Okay. And then third time through, all yours. You give me what you see, all that kind of stuff.
Got it.
So we've got this is them. You guys are defending. There's a top pick and roll. You go under and switch. You get caught on a backdoor cut after the wing pass. Give me an idea. It's early in the game. Give me an idea of what you see, any adjustments you would make, how you feel you did in terms of playing it.
So the biggest issue with this play is specifically with our backside, and you can go back just a little bit. So right there. So our point guard on the backside on the low block, Nate, he's actually supposed to be pulling over. So as the ball gets kicked ahead, go ahead and run it through. As the ball gets kicked ahead, he needs to be there discouraging that pass inside and forcing the skip, because the point guard he's guarding is essentially a non-shooter. We want him shooting that 3.
Right.
So that's the biggest issue there.
Fair to say in this game, then you're a low tag from the double side team.
Correct.
And in doing so, if you were a low side tag, like if it was played the way that you're describing, would you be Xing out on the double side?
Normally, yes. In this particular possession, we would not, because we want him shooting the ball. And we are a team that does play a lot of drop and ice. And for most of the year last year, we were the #1 team in the league defending in spot up, specifically because when we play ice and drop, we did not help off of spot up shooters, and we played the pick and roll 2-on-2. Because in our league, spot up is a huge part of teams' offense.
Right.
So we just force teams to not beat us with their spot up shooters.
So going back to the scouting and preparation part, you would, during the week leading up to this, expect this guy here to both know that he is the low tag and that he is recovering back on that long closeout, because you want that shot happening. And that might be a variation from typical week-to-week type coverage.
Correct. So based on that coverage, when we switch like that, everyone knows, okay, it's low man with the triple switch. If we were playing ice or drop coverage, we would have a different rotation.
Nice. I'm gonna stop the share. Just we got something in here. Mike says, so if it's a single side tag or double side tag, you are only helping from non-shooters, not always from the high or low help position.
So plan A for us is always low man when we're playing our triple switch defense. The non-shooter situation is, it only happened for us maybe 2 or 3 games out of the year with very specific players that we wanted to shoot every single shot. Generally, we did not only help off of non-shooters.
Interesting. You, dude, you are precise with the way you answer things. I love it. It's really great to hear. Thank you.
Nope, no problem. Thank you.
So we got a blob. I'm just wondering, and an end out a baseline out of bounds. I'm wondering.
I remember this one.
If it makes your scout, and if you played it the way you wanted to. So let me go back one more time. I mean, I wouldn't call it a box set because the guy's starting on the rim lines, but basically similar formation. He's going to go through an elevator type screen towards the sideline, except they don't pinch. So really, I guess it's more of a pin in. And it's the ball side.
So the
ball
play
side, and he
was
throws it
supposed
up.
to be the play was supposed to be a screen the screener say. It was supposed to be a back screen and a pin down. But right before he goes off the pin down, our defender Gabriel goes under the screen, and the guy shooting the ball is Marquinhos, who did have a stint with the Pelicans, played in Italy for a little bit. Very, very high level shooter. He's the second all-time scorer in the league. So you going under him is an absolute no-no, especially because he had just checked into the game and you're going under the best shooter in the league. So that's a horrendous scouting mistake that we reminded him of later.
What was the play supposed to be? You said again, it was a screen the screener action. Can you describe it for me? Sorry.
So go back a little bit. So freeze it here. Marquinhos is supposed to back screen the player at the elbow.
Right.
So he's supposed to back screen there to cut to the rim and then receive the pin down to go out to shoot. He knows that we're sniffing that out, and he slips it early to go out to the corner.
Oh, I actually see the hesitation now. I didn't see that before.
Yeah.
Like he's going to set it up, and then in an ideal world, your player should be locked and trailed right on him.
Correct. Should be chasing over.
Nice.
Especially going left, because he's a nightmare when you guard him going left.
Next we have, this is a defending clip with a backdoor cut on it. So the ball starts in the right slot, gets reversed to the other side. They fake an away screen, and he just rejects and gets the ball. You end up with the block at the rim.
Mm-hmm.
But how would you, are you happy with the way that you played it, not being married to the result, obviously, or would you play this differently?
So freeze it right before he passes the ball. So the coverage we were playing in this game, off ball, we were top locking, which means we deny any chance to go off the screen and force him to cut to the rim. Now, the rule with our top lock is after you top lock, you switch. So what should happen is Antonio, the defender in the weak side corner by the block, he should be taking this cut, and then Gabriel, the original defender, would X out to the corner shooter. So that's what's supposed to happen here.
Like it.
Now, the defender on the ball, I can't blame him too much for having his hands down, so to speak, because again, the guy he's guarding is one of the best passers in the history of the league, who just threw a behind the back pass to a cutter. So this is where
on time, on target.
So this is where, scouting, you have to understand there's certain things you can prepare for. You can't prepare for that because players are the geniuses. That's why they're on the floor, and things like this type of pass are going to happen. You just hope that it happens very, very seldom.
I agree with you. What about your on-ball coverage? Like I would assume I'm correct with my arrows here in terms of what you're describing. Your on-ball coverage, even though he throws a complete dime, would you influence that pass any differently, or are you fine with the coverage that he's playing there?
I'd probably just have his hands up a little bit more. And at the same time, we just want to cloud his vision more just because he's such a high-level passer. When you're defending high-level passers that are not great shooters, again, like a Rondo, the mistake we sometimes make is when you back off of them all the time, you're letting the best passer in the gym just have target practice to whoever he wants. He can see everything. So you do want to make him uncomfortable in certain situations so that he can't, play 2K, so to speak, in this example.
For sure. Do you think if you're really all up on him, hands up, he goes behind the back still?
He would try it. I've seen him do it before. For certain guys, it doesn't matter. And again, that's where the talent comes in, and you can't scout every aspect of a player's talent, right? You can only make them uncomfortable or influence it and go from there.
You know what I find interesting, like I've divulged with you before, my ultimate goal is to be at the pro level at some point or whatever, but I find it interesting that as the level goes up, the preparation seemingly goes down a little bit, but it's not that it actually goes down. It's just that players are good enough that you have to spend less time on certain elements in the preparation because they've got it. They've achieved flow in those areas. And then, with certain players at like a level that I coach at, it's like I have to spend a lot more time going through some basic things. We got something in the chat. Give me a second here. Oh, James just saying facts. Agreed. All right, so let's go next clip for you here. Give me 1 second. We've got, this is a wide pin to a top pick and roll is what my notes say. You guys are on the defensive side. He gets to his left hand and finishes. So just for anybody listening, we start left slot, we reverse the ball. There's a wide pin on the right side. The ball gets passed to him, and then we come into a top pick and roll where he gets all the way to the rim to his left hand. So take me through it, KJ. What do you see? How could you do better?
So
what do you like? All of those.
Freeze the clip when the trailer gets the ball at the top of the key. And right there. So Peppo, our point guard in the corner defending Balby, again, this is supposed to be a top lock. So what should happen is you completely deny and put your body on the screener, force the back cut. Antonio, who's guarding Leo number 77, stays in the paint to help on the cut. And then Joel Vitor, our 5, should be pressing the ball a little bit more. Just one step higher from where he is on the free throw line in the case of our center. Because he didn't get the top lock, he's forced to go over. So go ahead and play the clip. Go ahead and play the clip.
I'm going to. Give me 1 second. Sorry. My annotations are getting all messed up. All right. So here we go. We're playing.
Freeze it now. So now we're stuck in drop because, again, it's tough to go over then under and repick again. So he's stuck in a situation where he's forced to go over. So play it again. Keep going. And freeze it. So here we're stuck in a situation where he's late recovering to the ball handler, and our 5 takes a bad angle. So in the case here, you don't want to cut off this handler diagonally running towards the corner. You want to start exactly at the foul line, and you want to drop with him. And this is the mistake I see with a lot of drop coverage, is if you wait back in the paint for him to attack full speed, you're done. What you have to do is start high with the level of the screen, and you drop with him and contain him. Now, in this situation, our 5 would take the ball handler, and this should be a triple switch because he's late. That's always our rule with drop coverage. If you're late and you can't recover by the free throw line, you switch. So backside guy would take the roller. Peppo, our guard, would just leak out to the weak-sided wing. And then we go from there.
So I have a question for you then. And I've asked this question a few times before, and I've never gotten an answer that I fully understand. You've described basically starting at the free throw line and dropping with him. At what point do you now say, okay, we either veer or triple switch here? Or at what point is this guard saying, I'm going to be able to recover? Like, where is that decision made, and who makes that call?
So normally it's the guard who does make that decision because he knows if he can recover or not. Now, the problem is if you have a lazier player, anyone who coughs on him is just going to say, hey, switch. So the rule we have is once he gets near that free throw line, that's where the communication needs to be, hey, are we switching or are you coming back? Are you good?
Right.
And that's normally how we play it from there.
Do you ever veer switch, or are you always triple switching as a rule?
With this particular team, it was almost always a triple switch because our guards were very tiny. So them veer switching didn't help too much, because what happened was these ball handlers would attack the big, string him out, and then when we did the veer switch, they would just get sealed. So they would just throw it to either side of the floor, and we couldn't triple switch anyway because all our bigs are outside of the paint.
Right. Like it. I think I got something in the chat here. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, here, I'll ask it. Can you go back to the
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, can you go back to the clip real quick?
Yes, sure.
I mean, you just rewind it like right there. You're good right there. Are you okay with how the ones on, I guess, the two guard side are playing? It just seems like if he were, and I actually annotate, I probably can. If he were like, if this guy was like dropped a little bit, right? Right there, that just a quick stunt, right? And then that probably at least gives some time to recover. And then obviously he could be up a little more, but I don't know the scout report on them.
Right.
Sorry, Kate, just before you answer, basically for anybody listening, what James is saying is the two on the double side, are you okay with a stunt in from there as opposed to being outside of the paint as they currently are in the clip?
In this case, and especially with our defensive system, we actually don't want even a stunt in this situation. Because as I said, the scout is we do want him to score, and our defensive system for the year is to limit these easy drive and kick spot ups and sort of keep us out of rotation less because we're not scrambling as much. So the issue here is more the angle of the 5 when he's containing the ball, as well as the communication with the 2 on the backside as well. That's pretty much how we guard that. With certain high-level players, that stunt isn't going to affect them too much. As a great example, if you watch most of James Harden's clips in Houston, everyone knows that he's going to make a move, step back, or drive, and everyone stunts at him, but James knows they're not really coming to him.
Yeah.
So ball handlers like that, they're aware of who's going to stunt and why. So that's where we kind of just remove the stunt altogether.
Gotcha. Appreciate it.
For your big that's at the free throw line that is dropping, what are your teaching points that you would teach him to take the correct angle? Because I've heard boxer stance before. I've heard hands high, like the one hand, almost like stick hand and guide hand type deal. What are your teaching points that you would be telling him?
In the case of a non-handoff, this play was different because the drop was forced after the handoff. If it were just a traditional ball screen, we tell our 5 to have his feet parallel to half court, so completely squared up, and he's with the level of the screen. And when you're with the level of the screen, it makes it easier for you to drop with the level of the handler. When your feet are not parallel to half court, now you're one step late, and one step late against a guy that's smaller, faster, more skilled, they're going to find a way to take advantage of you.
Right.
So that's one of our big teaching points.
Yes. So, KJ, what do you want them to be the first step out of that squared up stance if they want to attack any side? What first step? How would you say they needed to step in or out?
So in this, if you look at this clip right here, I would keep his right foot, go back a little bit. I would keep him here. Now take one step further. Keep going, freeze it. When you drop this far, you're done. Because now you've taken 2 steps back. Now you have no chance to level yourself up again. So you want to take your step laterally and then begin the drop with your hands high, active, etc. But when you take that drop angle at an angle, you're done, because now the ball handler has the advantage to read if you're moving right or left, and he can adjust from there.
So I understand completely what you're saying. Does this raise some sort of subjectivity about drawing fouls on bigs who are not fast enough to get that step laterally, and a good ball handler could just run at their hip?
I would say, and this is where it gets a little, as you said, subjective, because it is personnel-based, scheme, etc. And
right,
you know, there are times where, and I'm sure you guys have all had this too, where okay, the big is known for foul trouble. You want to attack the big, but your point guard cannot throw it in the ocean if he was in the ocean. So you probably don't want that guy, trying to force the foul if he's already not in that position. So it does get tough. You do have to find ways to get the right people in the right spots. And that's one thing about, I do see this more in the pro level as opposed to the college level, which it's a little bit more systemic with the college system, where in the pros it's, hey, focus on what your best players or what all your players do well and just annihilate the matchup on the other side, whatever it is.
Right. Love it. Thank you. What do we got? We've got another defending clip, and then this is your matchup zone, I believe. And I think the only reason I really even noticed initially that it was the matchup was on this bailout by 34 going to the other side here. Mm-hmm. So there's the clip. I'll go back for anybody listening. Basically, it's a walk up. We get a pass to the right slot. We get a little bit of a touch action back. They bring it back to the right slot. They they advance the ball to the right wing. It goes back to the point, and we're recognizing now offensively that they're in a zone, and we end up punching the ball. And as soon as they punch it, KJ's team scrambles out. The ball goes to the other side, and you get a bit of a long closeout on a shooter. So how did you play it in your opinion? Maybe give us a little bit of a walkthrough of how you guys go through your matchup zone. Like, are you matching up on the punch into the post? Are you matching up on particular screens? All that fun stuff. Anything you could tell us.
Yep. So freeze it here. So the general rules with our matchup, and I say general rules because certain things in the game will force you to go away from those rules or forget them. But the general rule with the matchup in this case is if the person you're guarding passes and follows the ball to the strong side, you're going with him. You're taking a new spot in the zone, so to speak. If he passes and doesn't move or he goes to the weak side, you just bump him off to the next guy. And then ball screens become triple switch. So essentially your matchup zone is one giant triple switch. So run the play through and then freeze it when the guard scrambles out to the weak side.
Sure.
Right here. So for those of you that haven't heard of the term like scram switch, where you try to get your little guy out of the post while the ball's in the air, what teams started to do, and Flamengo was very good at this, the player cutting to the rim right now for Flamengo from that wing, teams started to dive the guy that we were scramming to. The reason teams do a scram switch is to hide your little guy from guarding in the post. So their adjustment was, okay, we're just going to dive whoever the little guy scrams on and just throw it over the top and play high-low. So this is a great help by our backside guy, I believe that's Gabriel, to take the bigger guy and send him out to the weak side. And again, this is Marquinhos, so I think finished maybe 5 of 7 for 3 in this game, something like that. And even though the contest looks late, the point guard's also, 5'9", 5'10", so you're not doing much against a 6'8" sniper.
So overall, you're pretty happy with the way that your team played this. This is pretty close to what you would want on that scram switch as best as possible.
Absolutely. And the matchup zone is something that teams don't see here in Brazil. It's something that was pretty unique to us. So it forced teams to prepare for us instead of the other way around, right? So we said, hey, let's make the offensive game plan simple. Defensively, let's have plan A, maybe plan B, and we live with it.
So how you mentioned this was probably about your 5th or 6th game. How do you implement a system like this? Because I would assume there's a lot of teaching points and it takes a bit of time. So are you doing it in preseason and training camp? Are you putting in specific for certain opponents? Like how's that implementation process look?
With this team, we practiced it, I would say, a little bit each day or maybe 3 or 4 times out of a week for 5-10 minutes. And we just told the players, look, we're not going to need this every game, but this is going to be sort of our trump card or our plan B in terms of how we guard people, because we do have, a few lineups where we had to play 3 guys that are 5'10" just because someone's in foul trouble or, there's a matchup or a guy's hurt. So we needed something to sort of screw with other people's heads. And we basically built it from 3-on-0 to 3-on-3 to 4-on-0 to 4-on-4 until we went 5-on-5. And then the key became defending common actions that people use against zone and just drilling those to death so that there wasn't something they haven't seen before.
Love it. This is another one of your 3-2. So they start in the backcourt, they walk it up, you fall back into your 3-2-2-3 zone. And then I think there was just a lack of a bump, or there was a bump up top, and you gave up the open shot, which I think now, after speaking to you and listening to your preparation, this is probably a particular guy that you were allowing to shoot.
This guy, no. What actually happened was number 4, the point guard, literally had no clue that that guy was so close behind him still, because Nate, the guard next to him, makes the right decision in terms of bumping and going back to his man. The guy shooting the ball, that he is a shooter. You can't let him shoot that. So that's completely his fault for not realizing that guy was still behind him.
So at the pro level, sorry, go ahead, KJ.
Because that's in the scout report. This is not a team that moves very well off the ball. They just don't. So you have to understand that when we go to our matchup, they're not sending 7 cutters through the lane on a given possession.
Right. So at the pro level, a mistake like this is made. How are you dealing with it? Do you just kind of briefly mention it? Do you coach on the fly, so to speak? Or are you like really going in detail with them in the next huddle? Like what's the process of dealing with something like that?
Generally, almost always on the fly, but the level of information you adjust with that player does depend on the player. There are certain players that you can coach on the fly very easily. You give them 1 or 2 words, or as you guys know, you can just give a player a certain look with your face and he knows exactly what you mean. There's other guys that you can coach on the fly. They're not going to understand it. They need a timeout. They need like a literal one-on-one in a controlled environment to understand. So it does depend on the player that you're coaching. So you have to know your players well.
For sure. Love it. Transition threes, I ask every time, yay or nay?
Oh, yay.
Yay. And would that be everybody has the green light to shoot it? Would it be only certain players? Like, how does it work in terms of the breakdown?
Definitely certain players should be shooting more than others. So we try to do a good job of establishing which guys have that green light to shoot anything with it within the volleyball line, so to speak. Like if you're in range, I don't care if you're near a line or not, shoot the ball. And the other guys start to figure out, hey, okay, I need to rim run, or I need to cut to draw a second defender on my cut and leave my teammate open. And we think through our system, we do a pretty good job of that in terms of controlling those types of shots in transition.
Love it.
The guy who shot the ball, he's a ex-G League guy, absurd shooter, one of the 2 or 3 best shooters I've ever seen or coached in my life. So we literally told him all year, once you cross half court, you're open.
Love it.
Seriously, you are open, because range, so to speak, is relative to a different player. So a 4-point line 3 for him is not a bad shot. For the other guys, it might be a bad shot, but you need to let guys do what they do within the confines of whatever your system is.
Do you practice with a 4-point line at all, or no?
As a team, we do not, but with my the player development stuff we do, I will have certain guys and we'll practice shooting 4-point shots, or even with our good 3-point shooters, none of our guys practice shooting with their toes on the line. Because the way you become a better shooter is also you go, I don't care if it's half a step back, just the smallest difference matters, because good shooters, they very rarely get those toes on the line shots if it's not on ball rotation. So I'm just going to say, okay, let's extend your range. Let's get you shooting some tougher shots and go from there.
Mike, I see you on mute. Do you have something?
Yeah. When would you think the NBA, FIBA, or any other league would implement the 4-point line? If so. Because
I
everybody's talking about a 4-point line, but guys, I haven't seen an official FIBA or NBA game with a 4-point line.
I'm actually hoping that a 4-point line never comes to existence. What I'm waiting for, and I don't know if it'll happen in the future or not, but having universal rules in regards to FIBA, because basketball in America, whether it's NCAA or high school, we don't play with universal rules. So you've got NCAA rules, FIBA, high school rules, depending on the state. You've got AAU rules, these middle school league rules. And that's a big problem when you consider if we're trying to evaluate players and help them develop. It's pretty hard to do that if every X amount of years you're changing the rules. Now, if I use FIBA players as an example, FIBA guys that don't go to the NBA basically play with the same rules their entire lives.
Their whole
They
lives.
play with the same 3-point line. They play with a different ball size and a different rim height, but they play with the same timeout rules in general and the court size. It's very easy to evaluate Luka Doncic when all you're evaluating is him playing with older men, right? But if I have to do a high school 3, now the college 3, now the FIBA 3, now the NBA 3, there's so much adaptation. And if our goal is to help the players, universal rules should be the way to go.
I agree with you 100% on that. I often talk about like the lack of a top-down model because of how many types of adjustments players have to make just simply by playing with different rules because they're playing in different places. Like you said, you could quite literally move from one state to another and play almost a total different set of rules.
Exactly. Like if you imagine, let's take Trae Young, for example. If Trae Young played in FIBA rules going up, with his level of decision-making, it would have been a joke because the kid is an absurd processor mentally.
For sure. All right. So what do we got next? We got a baseline out of bounds. Basically, it's a double reverse that ends up in top pick and roll going towards the single side. Fairly simple. I've seen this action pretty common in my league too, actually. Take me through it. How did you play it? What could you do better?
First part, scout report, chasing over on the guy we want shooting the ball. The scout report on Balby is, hey, go under the first, reconnect with him, and go under again. But go back to before he receives the ball, right? A little bit more. Okay, run the clip. Keep going. And pause. So when he's catching at velocity like this, you're done. Because you don't have the time to readjust your angle now. And you've got a high-level passer catching on the run. So you need to create that contact before you go under. And that's the mistake you make is if you don't make that contact, any smart player says, okay, if I don't want to shoot this, I'm going to drive the empty space because there's no contact. There's nothing impeding my progress, right? So the teaching point was supposed to be get contact with the handler, force him into the screen, go under, reconnect, and on contact again, go under again. And if he shoots it, hey, good shot.
Strategic question. Would you allow a foul on this because he knows he screwed up? Would you allow him to bump over and get a foul?
With any other player, yes. But this guy in particular is very foul prone. And his decision-making and passing was so valuable to the team because no one else could do it at his level that we kind of had to limit giving him that rule because we needed him on the floor. So we kind of had to risk it. Now, because he's late here, go ahead and run the clip. And freeze it. Same thing here, just triple switch it, right? 5 take the ball, next guy take the roll, and then our guard X's out to the backside, the wing. That's the emergency situation.
The low man is going to take the roll, the one under the rim?
No, in this case, we're going to take it with before. Only because they're so close to each other, we'd rather rotate with him and leave therefore shooting on the 3.
Okay.
But this is only because their spacing offensively was just very poor because you've got 4 guys inside the 3-point line.
Yeah, they didn't really get out very quickly. I saw that. But in an ideal world, would you say, like, you're done at this point, basically, is what you're saying? Like, everything, the rest of the play, you're trying to play catch up. because he's not in contact and he doesn't go under as he's supposed to.
Yeah, once you're late like this, it's triple switch, and we're just keeping the ball in front at that point.
Right on. Sorry, KJ, I'm gonna shamelessly plug my other Twitter. I run another Twitter that's called Hoop Blobs. I'll throw this one up on Hoop Blobs. I like baseline out of bounds plays, so that'll definitely be there. Little shameless plug there. This is a defending clip again. It's a step up to a single side. So from the left slot to the right slot, there's a pass, turns into a step up, and then he snakes it, and he passes to the shake in behind, and you get an open look at it. So give me an idea of your concepts against the snake, what you would be doing in an ideal world in order to guard this here.
So go back to the pin down first and freeze it. So first, Malcolm does a pretty good job trying to force the top lock.
Right.
So this is a good effort in that regard. He still receives it, but that's fine. So go ahead and give it to him.
What about that angle of recovery? Are you okay with this spin out here like this?
Yes, that one we told him specifically to do that. So that one we're living with. Because if he chases the other way on that top lock, that guy wants to freeze it here. That guy wants to go left, and he's a Hall of Famer going left and a all-star or superstar going right. So I'd rather deal with the all-star superstar.
Yeah, right. I hear you.
Right. So freeze it right when he begins to snake. And freeze.
Yeah.
So the rule with our snake is very simple. If this ball handler snakes and is dribbling towards the opposite sideline, it is the guard's job to recover, and the big takes the roll man. But the moment that big starts to attack downhill, or the guard attack the big, now we're switching. Big takes the ball handler, guard takes the roll. Now in this case, again, should be a triple switch. But you see what happened, we get two guys running to the roller on the snake. Right, go ahead and run the clip. Right, so now you got two guys stuck on the roll, and therefore gets a free three.
Sorry, just because I'm a little bit slow, talk me through your triple switch. Is it coming from the single side here?
Yeah, this one's coming from the single side.
So
because that's our 4 on the backside. So our 4 is going to take the roll, 5 takes the ball, and 3 will X out to
X out to the wing coming up. Gotcha. What about this dig from number 1 up top? Are you okay with that because his man is so high, or is it just pointless to do at that point?
He's under no circumstances should be stunting there, because the guy he's leaving, his name is Zach Graham, one of the best Americans in the league. The year before that season, he was averaging, I think, 22. Another ex-G League guy for a little bit. Under no circumstances are you to help off of him. Ever. I don't care who has the ball, what the stunt is, you're not helping. So that's just a brain fart there.
And fair to describe that probably there's no advance here, so there shouldn't have been a switch. There should have been a recovery, because to me it doesn't look like he ever starts going towards the rim. He's still going towards the sideline.
Agreed. And this is a communication by the handler's defender, Malcolm. One of his weak points, even though he brings a lot of aggression to the defensive end, I don't have to worry about his effort. He does die on screens a little bit once you touch him. So if you roll that back to before the snake begins, it's a little bit easier for Malcolm to get clipped in general, and you'll see it here. So he gets clipped pretty easily because he's not the strongest guy fighting through screens. And the screener does a pretty good job of feeling that, and you're going to see him try to, grab a piece of Malcolm again on his way to the rim. To stop that recovery. So, and that's something teams actually scout pretty well, is how well guys can recover back or not off the pick and roll.
So on the recovery back, I'm sorry to dwell on this clip a little bit because this one actually really intrigues me. What's the ideal angle for him to take here? Because the screener's holding his screen for a second, and then he's rolling in behind the ball handler. So
Yeah.
really kind of changes the trajectory of the ball handler's defender. So what would be the ideal teaching point for the ball handler's defender to be able to get back?
So normally in our league, these bigs that do those snake ball screens, they don't roll after getting a piece of the guy on the snake. They tend to wait a moment before diving behind. In this case, by this point in the year, teams know how we defend snake to a reasonable degree. So this is where it kills our snake concept, is if that guy just rolls early and rolls in the way of the guy recovering, there's no recovery.
Right.
So this was intelligent scouting by them to know how to attack that.
Is there ever in the way that you play an allowance for the ball handler's man to come back on this side to try and recover, if you can follow my mouse at all, to shortcut it the other way? So not go over top, almost as if they're going underneath and meeting them as they come back towards the sideline on the side of the camera.
I see what you're saying. In our case, it takes too long that you've got someone not guarding somebody on the recovery. And especially with some of these ball handlers, they can just probe and manipulate with their eyes. And, then they're looking off at the target and driving themselves to the rim. So it gets a little risky to take that route.
For sure. Do you see a screen the drop? Mike DK is asking.
By screen the drop, I'm assuming you mean like a Gortat screen, so to speak, where the roller rolls into the 5-man and the guard snakes back unimpeded for the layup.
Yeah.
We do not see that at all. And every coach I've talked to in Brazil hates the concept. And I don't know why, because I love the concept. It makes perfect sense. If it happens in our league, it's 100% an accident.
Interesting.
And I'm a fan of the concept very much, but it's not happening here.
So for anybody who's listening, I recommend you go back and run it back, the episode with Ryan Richmond. He talks a lot about what Mike DeCracker is asking, where he's, the Gortat is basically the roller goes down and screens the drop defender so that the ball handler can attack and get an open layup, so to speak. And it's good because he talks about it extensively, and I think it's a pretty good conversation.
Yeah.
Next clip, defending, repeated under, and then the up the floor. So I had a question on this one. It was really more of a curiosity one. But for anybody who's listening, basically the clip is there's an under a few times in the right slot, and then when the ball handler backs up, they follow him up the floor. Ball gets skipped to the other side for a three that is missed. I was really more so just wondering about at this point here, before he goes back up the floor, you've gone under twice, and then when he backs it up, why do you still choose to guard him this high if you're going under on the action?
I would love to know the reason for why we went over on this pick and roll as well, especially that far from the floor. Again, he's not shooting that. It's not in his game. Go under again, and we will tell the guys, look, if you have to go under 5 times, I don't care.
Right.
Go under 5 times, because if he's not attacking to score, or sorry, let me rephrase that. If we're forcing him to score, his teammates are not getting shots because they rely on him to get the ball. So if you remove that, you're forcing other guys to do what they don't do well. And that's the point. Make passers scorers, and now these other guys don't touch the ball.
So after the initial unders, the first 2 of them, as this ball handler backs up, how high do you want that ball defender to follow him to prevent a head of steam, so to speak?
That's too high. I would say not higher than the C that you see on that logo there. Right. I wouldn't go higher than that. I just wouldn't go higher than that at all. There's no point. Now, granted, go back a little bit, and this is an intelligent screening read by the 5. So he comes up on the right side, and then at the last moment flips the screen to the left.
Yep.
It works very well against drop, but I love this against teams that play hard hedge, because when that defender prepares to hedge, you flip the screen at the last minute and attack. Now you can reject. Now you can get downhill. It's a really good way to free up your guards if you struggle against hard hedge.
Yeah, and you're just basically teaching your guards at that point to go opposite the screen defender. Like, see where that screen defender is and go in the opposite direction, so to speak.
Yep. And that's a pretty easy adjustment to make. Hey, if you're coming right, go left at the last minute, or vice versa.
Right.
Your screening angle becomes more important at that point, but it is an effective strategy.
Menelik, do you have a reject screen on this or not? Otherwise, I might ask a question if not.
I don't believe that I do have one. So go ahead.
Then I will fire it away because we're talking about rejects. So KJ, is your defensive concept the same if a player rejects even by accident or even by purpose, or the same if it goes over? So better rephrase it. Do you have another defensive scheme if players reject a screen?
We do not. The first rule, and it's probably going to sound oversimple, don't ever get rejected. If you're late going over the screen, we have plans for that. That's totally fine if you get screened 100 times. If you get rejected, now we have to either X or we just switch, right? Now, this also depends on where the screener's defender is. If we start at the level of the screen and I'm the 5, it should be harder to reject because I'm right there at the level of the screen. Now, if I'm sitting back under the paint, right, like too far back, and I get rejected, now you're basically forcing us into a switch we don't want. So any reject just becomes a switch. We X out and we rotate and try to scramble as little as possible.
So KJ, the guys in the call are going to laugh at me because I ask this all the time, and this is the big joke now, apparently. I asked you for an hour. I got a few more clips. Are you still okay on time, or can we?
Yeah, no worries.
They laugh at me because, like, honestly, every week I end up asking because we never make an hour anymore. So I need to just start asking for 90 minutes of people's time, I think.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I'm good.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you. What do we got next? Post counters, placing of the guy at the nail. So you guys end up punching the ball on the offensive right block on this one. So there's a screen, and then he dives into the post. You punch the ball, and they haven't doubled yet. Looks like they're stunting from the ball side. It looks like the low man or the most important guy might also come. And you guys just kind of place your guy at the nail, get a nice little drop off. He reverses it, and you get a jump shot from the nail. My question on this was, what are your post counters to double coverage, to stress coming from certain areas on the floor? Is this one of the most common things you do, placing a guy at the nail? And do you cut sometimes as counters as well?
If we see any double team, regardless if it's post or pick and roll, our job is done. We usually just cut one guy extra into the open space and play our Yerta concepts from there. In this case, go back to the beginning of the play. So this particular action out of our 5 out was specifically designed to attack switch. So we did this expecting the switch and knowing it was going to happen. So run it through and then freeze it when it gets in the post. Because we know typically teams that trap the post, you're basically trapping and you're zoning up behind the ball, so to speak.
Right.
So knowing that our target is almost always one of the top 2 defenders in the zone, depending on where our shooters are. So as you run the clip, we set that flare knowing that the other guy's going to have to take a step out, and then we can get the slip. Because the guy who ends up getting the ball right there in that situation, he was our best player. So you have to go with him. You're not going to leave that guy open on a flare in a double team. So we use his gravity off the ball to create that opportunity.
Sorry, I got a munchkin troubling me a bit. Thank you. Appreciate that one. Within concept and where the help comes from on this one. So we had reversals to the right slot. It looked like there was going to be a stagger away for a second. Doesn't end up happening. And then this is, I guess, a bit of a reject coming. And then where your help came from, I was just wondering if you help from there because that's off of a 5, because I would normally see people help from that single side type deal. Maybe you want to avoid that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, in this case, so go back to the start of the play and then freeze it when the stagger takes place. So freeze it here. So originally, right here, ball pressure is fine because, again, that's Marquinhos. That's their best player. We're top blocking here on the guard, expecting them to cut. So we were expecting 6 to cut down towards our low man.
Okay.
And then Peppo, our point guard, was going to take the guy lifting up. They knew this was coming, so go ahead and run the clip. So that's why they kind of broke the play and ran it back. I do think the stance by our defender on the ball was a little too open because he had him where he wanted and kind of just opened the runway a little bit. I do want this help from our other big, just because their big does like to pick and pop at times, and on any pop, we don't care on these X-out switches. And because, again, this guy in the backside corner is the same guy I said earlier, do not leave under any circumstances. So in this case, that switch is fine.
Okay. Like it.
And that's basically our rule across all pick and pops generally is there's a pick and pop and the handler is too far downhill, switch with the pop. So instead of a triple switch, that guard just takes whoever pops out.
And I mean, like, he makes this, but that's, you end up with a good contest. That's a hard shot. Like,
and again, it's going right. He is an all-star superstar.
Exactly.
He's a Hall of Famer. I'll deal with the all-star.
All right. Pat him on the butt and say, good job. End the game. So I don't know if anybody can see it here, just kind of what the plan is. So you guys are inbounding. You're down 1 point. There's 30 seconds left. As they're coming up, like, have you prepared to play in the flow at this point in the season? What's sort of like your go-to, all that kind of stuff? Like, what are you looking for out of this set?
Let me see which one this was again.
So I would call it almost a wide horns alignment. You go to the right slot and advance the ball to the right corner, punch it into the post on the block, and then he just goes strong and gets an and one out of it. So you guys go up on 1 point.
And then our fan base goes ballistic.
Yeah.
So funny enough, go to the play and then stop right when the weak side big starts to screen away. And freeze it here. So originally, the play was actually not for a post up. The play was supposed to be in isolation for the guy on the weak side wing because they like to switch pin downs with their 4. So the guy defending in the post, he was actually supposed to switch onto our one-on-one guy on that wing, and we were going to drive the mismatch and force a 2-on-1 and finish from there. So everything that happens after that was basically just pure instinct and concepts from them to dump it into the post.
So then, question for you, because the copy of the game that you sent me had none of the dead time in between. Is this an ATO or no? Because it looked like to me when I was watching it, you just guys played. No, so
that's not an ATO. That one we knew what we were going to if there was live flow and there was time. We pick 1 or 2 sets before that game, so we knew we were going to this.
So in what you deliver to your guys, you would also have end of game plan. Here's maybe 2 sets that are like our go-to that we're looking for.
Yep. Our point guards, all of our ball handlers. In this case, when we play, because we play a lot of 5-out, so it's not important who brings the ball up to initiate those sets because we don't need just one person to call every set and bring the ball up. But those guys get a list of the best 2 or 3 plays to call for every member on their team. So they know, intuitively, okay, I can go to these sets for this guy, these sets for this guy. And then at the end, they'll say, hey, late game, no flow, we've got these 2 sets. Hey, there's a timeout, probably going to one of these 2. And as a staff, we keep maybe 5 or 6 late game sets on hand to just draw up that we've practiced before. 2 in the half court, 2 BOB, 2 SOB that they've done a million times in practice. And hey, we're going to go to this one or we're going to go to this. So had this been a dead ball, we would have run something else.
So that's awesome. And I love it. This raises a question, maybe a little bit subjective, but I've heard a lot of debate, discussion around this, et cetera. But like with the scouts that you're delivering, anybody I know that knows you, that is like sort of immediate circle or whatever, has said, man, KJ is incredibly thorough. He's really, really good. You should check out one of his scouts type deal. What about the discussion about less is more simplistic versus you mentioned any ball handler will have 2 sets for each guy, so to speak. And I'm assuming there's probably overlap with some of those sets, but like, what about this learning process and implementation process of how much can they bring in, can they acquire from what you're giving them, so to speak?
So with the scout report specifically, now granted, we started the year, the written report the coach wanted was like this 20-page Godzilla of a report.
Right.
And as the year went on, we definitely reduced that for the same reason you just said about less is more in regards to information. So the written report, we never reviewed that with the players. They were free to skim through and read whatever they want. They have the information. If you don't know it, hey, you had it. We're not going to, put the gun to your head in this regard. The video, everyone watched both as a group and individually. Right. So that's just a 5-minute team video. And then the individual player videos, I send to the group as well. And that's where the bulk of our scouting comes from. That's why it's a little bit less time consuming. And I might text a guy and say, hey, I know you normally guard 2, 3, 4, but today you might switch on to the 5. So watch the 5 videos, right? That's kind of how we balance that dichotomy.
So these plays, though, that are like, hey, I have 2 plays for KJ in case I need to go to KJ late in the game, so to speak, or in this game, we are going to go to KJ when we need a bucket because we like that matchup or whatever. Are those specific to each game? Or are those like, we've got these, 10, 12 sets that are 2 for everybody, so to speak, and everybody knows that from the beginning of the season. And unless we specifically change them, everybody knows that's what we're going to go to.
So our playbook is relatively small. I would say the entire playbook, like man, inbound, zone, everything, probably did not go beyond 12 to 15 maximum.
Okay. Right.
So in our case, by a few games after this particular game on screen, we changed it to, instead of, the best plays for every person, we would say, hey, here are the 2 or 3 players on the other team we want to target. Here are the sets we're going to use to target those guys. And we would let the point guard say, hey, if you want to call something else in a different time, fine. But understand that our objective is to kill one of these 3 guys with these particular actions or concepts.
Right. Love it.
And then we would adjust based on the scout if the team switched or iced or whatever.
So what is it down to now as a report size at this point in your career? Are you still a couple pages, or
the written scout now? I believe this other assistant does. I want to say it's 8 to 10 because it's a different staff now at the time. So I believe it's about 8 to 10 pages, and then the video is a little bit longer. So now I want to say the video is 6 to 7 minutes. And then I still do the individual videos the same as always.
Nice. Okay, so you guys score on this. You go 1 up. He misses the free throw, so you remain 1 up. And they go ATO. So, or no, actually, they just inbounded after that.
Yeah, this one hurt. This one hurt.
And this guy makes a miraculous runner from the left wing driving in. Sorry, go ahead.
It's funny. I know it looks miraculous. Now, remember I said this guy's not really a shooter. Those floaters for him, that floater, he's Stephen Curry with the right-hand floater. It's completely ridiculous, especially because I believe we had a foul to give at this point and did not use it, which hurts even more. Because if you go back to the start of the play, we basically had no clue that he was free, like no clue whatsoever. So that's the part that kills me. And granted, he's also stuck helping in the middle because there's a rim runner. But this right-hand floater, it's tough. And he habitually has a habit of when there's under 4 minutes left in the game, those threes that he doesn't make, they all go in. I've seen it multiple games with this guy. Once that clock goes under 4, another player basically wears his jersey like a twin or something, and he meets everything.
Comes out ATO and he's on fire all of a sudden.
Yeah. And we really, really wanted this game, especially for our fan base, because they're very, very, very intense. It's still the loudest arena I've ever been in my life was that game. I'm surprised I don't have hearing damage from that game, honestly. So seeing that floater go in, that one hurt.
Is there, in your opinion, anything that could have been done better defensive transition wise? Like you said, he was kind of stuck for a second because of the rim runner, but maybe even earlier, so to speak, or like, is there a communication mishap? Like, how could you have done it better?
Probably, I mean, obviously hindsight is 2020, but we probably in this case would have just put everyone back and said, hey, we know he's going to make it anyway. So let's stay back in case they try to inbound and bomb it. Right. And if they Christian Leightoner you or something like that, hey, good game.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, he makes it. They go up one. You guys are side out. This one was an ATO. So talk to me about what you said in the huddle, what you were looking for, etc.
So this ATO is from Brad Stevens. It's supposed to be designed for a lob with a curl to the rim by one of our shooters. We just get pushed out of position way too easily and the play completely breaks. So go back to right after he curls and freeze it a little bit more, freeze it here. If I remember correctly, I don't believe this was supposed to be a pop back to the ball. I believe it was supposed to be a second pin down for the guy in the corner. And if they switch, you just dump it into the post and throw it over the top, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, not great execution there. But they defended well as well. So
right. And then, I mean, basically what ends up happening from there, they get a side out. And I didn't put it in, but they, with the side out, they don't end up scoring. And, that's the game. You're down one, ultimately, is what ends up happening. So, I mean, in hindsight, I don't think there's anything in the scouting or the process that was omitted that would have cost you the game. That just was a nail biter that came down with some excellent guys doing what they do well and what they're paid to do professionally.
right.
And does anybody have any questions just before I wrap it up? Awesome. KJ, as I anticipated, this was really awesome. I really, really enjoyed this and appreciate. Yeah, go ahead, Savat.
Question for KG. KJ, well, you do an amazing job with the team, etc. But how do you handle being scouted? Like, for example, in this game, if I'm watching it, I say that Flamengo is going top block, so I have to prepare my team for a top block or etc. So how do you manage being scouted?
That's a great question. And I would say it depends on the concept. If I'm using top block as the example, okay, teams top block because you use off-ball screen. So if that's the issue, not to say I stop running off-ball screen, but I don't use it as my initiating action to begin the play. I do it later in the play where if you top block, it's much more difficult to do. It's very easy to top block when you know the play is coming and that's the start of the play, right? Just like a play is easy to defend if I can deny the entry pass, right? So we will just do different actions, and that's the great thing about our 5-out. It is very versatile. We used to do what I call musical chairs, is kind of my name for it. Run the exact same play and just switch everyone's positions. It's a little awkward when your 4 has to top block against a 2. It's a little more awkward. So that's kind of ways that we mess with people's heads.
Like that.
So I have a question as well. Based on that question, do you feel you won the coaching chess match? Who made better adjustments? Do you feel your side had a better game plan to win and it was just individual execution? Or was that partly in how you encoded the message and the players weren't able to adhere in the second half because of previous things?
I do think our coaching chess match, so to speak, went really well. Plan A was executed pretty well in the first half, and plan B in the second part of the third and the rest of the fourth, I thought was done as well to be expected in certain areas. The individuality of certain players from the other team definitely took over, and some of the adjustments they made in response to our matchup zone caused some issues when you consider some of the offensive rebounds that took place. where the shot goes up and 2 is boxing out 4, things of that nature. And I mean, at the end of the day, the teams like that are like that for a reason, right? Most teams are not going the length of the floor with a right-hand floater over your head and walking off like they do it every day. So tactically, I think we did pretty well. You got to tip your hat off that if that's how you're going to lose, that's how you lose. But it does hurt that we ended up having 6 losses by 1 point that year. So when we played them later on in the year, we lost by, I believe, 6 at their house, but had a 4-point lead for most of the game.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? All right, I'll go ahead and do my usual thank yous and wrap it up. Thank you to all the coaches who jump on each week. Sometimes we get some new ones, but there's definitely a large percentage of coaches that have shown their support every week, and I really, really, really thank you very much. It means a lot to me. KJ, this was awesome. Thank you for taking some time out of your day, out of your week, to spend it with me and give me some feedback about one of your games, run it back, so to speak. This was a really cool experience, and I really genuinely appreciate it. And then thank you to those who listen in on the podcast or watch on YouTube. If anybody has any feedback, please feel free to reach out. I'm usually pretty accessible and happy to have conversations about basketball all the time. Love sharing the game. Really, really am into this, and seems to be my main hobby over the past few years. So definitely am keen on doing so. Next episode, we will have Paul Kelleher joining us from Ireland and talking about the Ireland national team at the U19 level, I believe he is at. And that being said, did somebody give me an 18? Thank you. U18 level. And that being said, I'm really humbled that this has made it 40 episodes. If anybody has watched or gone through all of them, they would know how much it has changed throughout and what a process it has begun, what a process it has been. So thank you for everybody who's been involved. This has been really, really awesome. KJ, just one big thank you to wrap it up. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, and like I said, thanks again for having me on to talk some hoops. And before we get out of here, would all of you guys mind unmuting, tell me where you're from, what you guys do? I'm always curious, who's watching. So just go ahead and shout it out.
So I'll go first, I guess. I'm lead assistant at George Brown in Canada, as well as a strength and conditioning coach at the largest altitude gym in North America and the first one in Canada, training Olympians and high performance athletes, as well as doing basketball.
Nice.
I'm a head coach at Elite Academy in Belgium, under 16 and under 21 boys.
Okay. Oh, so you probably know Alex Sarama.
Yeah. I speak often to him. Yeah, he was here with. I was an assistant under him for a year. So.
Okay, yeah, that's my guy. Yeah, good dude.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go. I'm James Kowal, assistant at Caltech Division III in Pasadena.
Okay. You actually, I believe, worked with one of my former guys, Gokul.
Yeah, Gokul. Love
Yes.
Gokul.
So
Yeah,
I worked with him a little bit, more so with his younger brother, Rahul, but I know that entire family very well because I'm from that same area as Gokul.
Oh, nice. San Ramon.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, actually, Rahul's, I believe he's a senior this year in high school.
Yeah.
So time flies.
Yeah, no, it makes me feel very old because I worked with him when he was learning to walk. So I definitely, the gray hairs show more when I hear his name.
For sure.
Yeah, who else?
I'm Carol.
I'm Gareth. I'm the head coach of the under 17 Irish team. So based in Dublin.
Nice.
And Carolyn Smalls. I'm a teacher and coaching AAU girls basketball 8th grade in Baltimore.
Good deal.
My name is
but it's on my list. Baltimore. It's on my list.
My name is Seva Kitanjian, Lebanese Armenian, recently moved to New Jersey. Also member of EuroLeague Head Coaches Academy. I have 7 years of professional playing experience in Lebanon with Team Momentum, and looking forward to what's coming in New Jersey.
Nice.
LB, do you want me to stop the recording?
Oh, it's up to you.
No, it's, you know,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
you're comfortable.
yeah.
So KJ, I'll introduce after. I'm just gonna end the recording there. Thanks so much. I'll tune in next week with you guys afterwards. Appreciate you.